We're going live. We're going live. What's up, everybody? How's it going? Welcome back to Hooksets Are Free. My name is Tyler, and this is another live unboxing. Tonight is Saturday night, February 19th, 2022. Hope you all are doing well. Whenever it is that you're watching this video, whether it's day, night, or you might happen to be in here live, which is all the more fun for everybody who joins in. So Grayson Filament in the house. Quickly, how you doing, man? Good to see you in here. Yes, sir, you are. Grayson is first this time. I feel like it's sporadic as for when you join in, whether you're early or you're late, but glad to see you in here early tonight. Daniel T in the house. My main man and my moderator. How you doing, dude? Losing Big Fish. How you doing? I'm going to give people just a couple minutes before I rip open these packages. I told you guys that these were coming. Look at what they put on this box. Do not open with a knife. That's kind of silly. I wish I had a knife just to spite them, but I'm going to use a fish hook instead. So all good. Hope you guys are having a great weekend so far. I had a nice day with my kids today. I've got to work tomorrow, unfortunately, but it is what it is. So I thought I would hop on here, hang out with you guys. I've got 2 beers here, and I do have that rye from the other night. But if you guys were on Thursday night with me, I got a little bit silly at the end of the stream, and I don't really know what happened or how that went down. I was on for over 2 hours, so I suppose that's how it went down. But yeah, 3 drinks in, I started getting a little squirrely, if you will. So drinking beer tonight to try and take it slow, but we'll see how this stream goes tonight. I've got a total mess in front of me on my desk. I'll just show you real quick. It's absolutely crazy, and that's all over the desk. So yeah, appreciate you guys hitting that thumbs up button for me real quick. There's 7 people in here, 4 thumbs up real quick. So that's awesome. Eliza in the house came over from Debo. I appreciate you. You'll check it out for a bit. Okay, cool. No worries. Well, I am going to unbox a couple things that I picked up from Cabela's. I ordered these online per the advice of one of our regulars in here by the name of Michael Romero. I was looking for this bait for, dang it, one of my kids is awake right now. Guys, give me 2 minutes, but I'm going to open this in just a second here, okay? What's up, Ron Holly? Sadie? I'm coming. Sorry, guys. My 3-year-old has been difficult since going into her big girl bed a couple months ago. And she thought I was going to be up to bed already. So she's getting a little impatient. So sorry for the interruption, guys. 12 people in here. I appreciate you hanging with me for 2 minutes. I'm going to use a hook to open this package. As I said, Michael Romero was the one who told me where I could find this bait in stock. And they had almost every single color in stock at the time of purchasing. This was about a week ago. Cool thing about purchasing online from Cabela's is that you can pick up from your local store for free. So no shipping cost, anything like that. And they will just send things from one store to another and tell you when it's ready to go pick up. So that's what I did here. It took them almost a week to actually get the package to my store, but this came in 2 separate deals. Dag nabbit. It said I picked up everything, but that's a lie. There are 2 things missing from this package, and that's disappointing, but oh well. When I went to Cabela's to pick up my order today, of course, I couldn't help but make a couple impulse purchases, and a couple were some packs of Max Scent, both in the black color. One is the 5-inch General. This is just a Senko style stick bait. I actually don't throw the Max Scent General all that frequently, not because it doesn't work, but just because I have preferred the Bass Pro Sticko for a number of years and haven't really thrown a wacky rig all that much over the last couple of seasons, just because I find it to be a little bit boring, if we're being honest. But this bait right here, the Max Scent Hitworm, was absolutely killer for me last year, specifically in their, I believe it's called pumpkin seed color. And yeah, that's like a natural brown type of color. And it was wicked for me, but I didn't have any in the straight black color. I have since picked up the larger Magnum Hitworm in 1 or 2 sizes, and then a couple of other colors in this Hitworm. But this was a killer bait for me last year, not just for fishing on a drop shot and or wacky rig, Nico rig type of presentation for bass, but trimming it down and using sections of it on a small jig head for pan fishing and trout fishing. There's something about that scent, which is now all over my fingers from just showing you those 2. But good Lord, the Max Scent is super effective. Eliza, the Ocho is a very good bait. I almost picked up a pack of them in that very transparent glacier color. It looks really cool. You know, it's like totally clear with some like light blue flake in it. The Ocho is a good bait, but you know, a stick bait is a stick bait for the most part. I kind of take that back right away, because you can go all the way from one end of the spectrum that is a super slow fall with like a Yum Dinger to then like a Max Scent General and something that is very heavy, very salted, and is going to fall much quicker. So, yeah, picked up 2 of those, and we can talk more about others after I run through this package. But the main reason I picked up this package was because I was on the hunt for the Rapala OG Tiny. So we've talked about this bait before, but I have not gotten my hands on them until just now. So you guys are flying in the chat. So sorry that I can't keep up, but I will try to keep an eye on it. So this has been a favorite color of mine in a couple of baits that Rapala makes for a while now. This is called Red Crawdad, and you know, it's got that green back and that red side and belly. So not quite as bright as like the Demon, which they don't make this bait in, but it's also not nearly as natural as some other craw patterns, one of which I've got here that I'm going to show you in a second. So I will just tell you first impressions. This is a small bait, and I love that about it. So in comparison to, say, the OG Slim, which is a 6-foot diver, whereas this is a 4-foot diver, I've got it in the same color. I'll just pull that out to show you. This new OG Tiny 4 is quite a bit smaller, and I like the shape quite a bit better. If I were carving a balsa bait, which I have before, um, now this is not a great example because I don't love the shape of that one, but what you'll see is that with the original OG Slim 6, it's got a much deeper belly and a less rounded profile, whereas the OG Tiny looks quite a bit more natural to me. If I put these side by side, you can see the size difference here in that the Tiny is quite a bit smaller. That bill is quite a bit shorter. And the bait itself is quite a bit more narrow. So I love that, especially when considering a flat-sided crankbait. So this OG Tiny 4 is one that I'm very, very excited to fish this upcoming season. I found that the 6 was a good bait and definitely in, say, my top 5 flat-sided crankbaits, but the hooks that come on this bait are rather large. They're like a hybrid style hook that is between a round bend and an EWG, and it's got a very wide gap on it. And these are pretty big hooks, maybe a size 5 or a size 4. And I got a few of them hung up, so that was a little bit of an issue for me. Let me catch up on some of these comments. Eliza says some of her fish are already bedding. Dang, that's intense and awesome. Lucky you. If some of you guys in here right now are coming from Debo and are not already subscribed to the channel here, do me that favor, hit the subscribe button so that you know when I go live in the future. You can hang out in some of these conversations. I go live every week, and it depends on whether it's sometimes Thursday, but usually either Friday or Saturday night. So I did go live 2 nights ago on Thursday, took last night off, and here I am again tonight. I do a fair amount of unboxings, but we talk a lot about tackle. So if you guys have questions, feel free to ask at any point about anything. I've got another handful of colors of this bait to show you. There are only 2 different baits in this unboxing. There were supposed to be 4, but the other 2 did not show up yet. So I will have to follow up on that order. This bait already has what looks to be like some hook rash, which is kind of disappointing. So this color is called dark brown crawdad. Quite a bit more natural than that red craw that I just showed you. This has a brown back. Look at the scuff marks on that already, straight out of the package. Not that big of a deal. I don't really care, but it's got that red belly, that brown side, dark brown back. Very natural crawdad pattern, and one that I will throw year round. Whereas this red crawdad, I'm definitely going to throw earlier after ice out. So along the same lines as the red crawdad is this awesome color, and this is Chartreuse root beer craw. I'm pulling all these out because I'm loading these into my flat side box after the stream tonight. So there's really no reason for me to keep these in their boxes. As you guys know, I do not purchase and keep baits in their boxes. I load them into my own tackle trays, but this is a sweet color. You might not be able to see all the flake that is in this bait. Sometimes my camera doesn't want to focus for you and be able to show you all the goodness that's in here, but this has a chartreuse side that fades to a green back, has an orange belly, and has a whole bunch of blue flake in there. You can see a little bit of that right now. So very good color, especially for muddy water. Happy about that. So I will rotate between that and the red craw early in the spring when the water is a little bit muddy. So I picked up those 3 craw patterns. They do make a couple of others, but um, those were the 3 that I felt would kind of cover most of my bases when it comes to imitating a craw with a flat-sided crankbait. Michael Bradley grew up throwing the Fat Wrap. That's a great bait. I have one here close by that was my dad's back in the 80s. This is one of the OGs, made in Ireland, and yeah, classic color pattern too. So yeah, the Fat Wrap. You're right that Rapala is a really good brand. You can't go wrong with it for sure. So man, you guys are flying in the comments. It's going to be very hard for me to keep up. Rich says, new guy here, Hooksets. Everyone hit the like for this young man. I appreciate that, Rich. Thank you very much. We got 10 thumbs up. I appreciate you guys very much. Cheers to all of you, whether you're drinking or not tonight. Here in Colorado, we drink a fair amount of Coors. I prefer the banquet beer. This is kind of our go-to cheap or lighter beer, if you will. Coors Original. I do like it in the stubby bottles, but sometimes you can't always get them. All right, then I got, see, one of the colors is missing, but I did get 3 shad patterns. I'm going to show you 2 right now, and then 1 off the wall color that I know that our man Bassless Chap, Ron Holly, does have. Showed me in a picture the other day, actually, so I know for a fact he's got it. Eliza says she doesn't throw a crank that much, to be honest. I used to be the same way, but I've rounded out my arsenal and gained enough confidence in throwing crankbaits that this year that is going to take a lot of priority. My crankbait setup is so dialed. I absolutely love it. So I intend to use it more and more this year. This, I believe, is called Citrus Shad. Dang it. I'm throwing these boxes all over the place. I don't know what it's. Yeah, Citrus Shad. This is a cool blueback Chartreuse line along the shoulders. Has a pearl white side and then a Chartreuse belly with an orange throat. So very cool color pattern here that is both natural and not at the same time, which I'm a fan of. Think that will do well in a lot of different water clarities when imitating a shad. Now, in slightly higher sun conditions and when flash is going to matter, this color is really hard to not like. This is the big shad color. You get that color shifting back, going from like that green to purple on the shoulder, chartreuse line, silver side, and then that charcoal, almost black belly. So big shad. We talked about this color for a little while on the stream the other night, and I've got it in a handful of different Rapala baits, especially their balsa baits like the DT4, DT6, and both of these OG baits. So one last color that I got, and I only got it because it looks cool, but honestly, I have not had this color in any bait. It might be new to the market, so I don't really know that. But let me catch up on these comments. Rich says, I am betting right now. Damn, eyelids are getting heavy. That's pretty funny, man. Matt says, oh, they work for Bass. I don't know what you guys are talking about. Yeah, Rich, I'm not too worried about the back being scuffed up. I do have clear nail polish and a clear coat that I could put on that thing, but I'm really not concerned with it. So check out this last color pattern here, guys. What in the heck is that? They call this Kusa Special. So this is a yellow more than it is a chartreuse. It's got kind of a natural light brown back. and then those green lines down and a white belly with some orange on the throat and the tail. So this is a color that, I've seen a couple of bait makers come out with. I know that Strike King has a similar color that they make in the Chick Magnet. Um, got my attention. Looks interesting for sure, but I'm not totally sure what to think. So I got it because it looks cool, not because I have a ton of confidence or know exactly when and where I'm going to throw it. So we will see about that. But uh, Matthew Scaldone, what's up, dude? How you doing? I just skipped a whole bunch of comments on accident, and that is my bad. But Grayson wants to know, what are your favorite February / pre-spawn baits? Well, February is not pre-spawn for me because we're still frozen over. Pre-spawn doesn't start until late March, early April, and really all of April for me. But um, we can cover that in just a few moments. So if I don't answer that question right away, hit it again in the comments in a few minutes. Um, and we will talk about that. Okay. Daniel says, just looking now, the color called Crawdad looks different in that gold color. I'm not going to look it up right now because the comments are flying, but I'll take your word for it. Daniel says, Tyler, you got my address. Send me that big shad one. LOL, just kidding. Yeah, hell no, dude. I should have picked up 2 or 3 of them. I'm pretty sure all of these are still in stock at Cabela's. So if you hop online elsewhere, you're going to notice that it's very hit or miss. I mentioned the other night the Discount Tackle got these baits in stock earlier this week, and most of the colors are already sold out. So, of course, they've got like the perch pattern and maybe one of the craws, stuff like that. But for whatever reason, I think the perch pattern is one that doesn't sell well, even though it does a good job of mimicking a perch. It's a solid color pattern for sure. But I don't know. I didn't pick any up in this order, even though they were available. I just didn't want to buy like 10 of them straight out of the gate. So I bought 7. But I was curious to see all these different colors. So, all right, guys, last bait in the pack. And this is the Fritzside 5 Junior. I opened a couple of these not too long ago, and sadly, I don't even know exactly where they are. Probably in one of these boxes around here. They need to go into my flat side box because this bait is likely to shoot up in my ranks when it comes to confidence baits for flat-sided cranks this season, specifically because of the size and the diving depth. I have used the Fritzside mostly in the 7 and the 9 up until this point, and those guys for me are mostly diving too deep. Little bit of an issue for me. So where I like to fish shallow and primarily from the bank, I see this 5 Junior being awesome. Very small profile bait, and they're making it in some of these HD colors. So check this out. This is called HD Green Craw, and how awesome is that? How realistic looking is that thing? Super good. So this is a 1/4 ounce bait, and just 2 inches long. So it is going to need to be thrown on gear that is a little bit more dialed in. And luckily my cranking stick will have no problem with a 1/4 ounce crankbait like this. I believe the tiny OG is like 5/16. So same type of deal. Let me show you these side by side. But really what you get out of these are small bodied flat side crankbaits that are going to dive pretty shallow for you. Only issue is that they are lightweight. So a lot of people would throw them on spinning setups. I'm still going to throw it on my bait casting crankbait setup, which is a Daiwa Tatula 7'1", maybe it's a 7'3", and it's a crankbait rod. It has a medium power, moderate, or I guess they call it regular action, and I find that rod does me well. It is rated down to, I believe, a quarter, but it might go as light as an eighth. But I have no issues throwing quarter-ounce baits on it, especially because the reel that I use with it is a Daiwa Tatula SV, and I absolutely love that reel. So I just use a straight 12-pound fluorocarbon and am good to go with most crankbaits that I throw. Of course, if I'm throwing like a 2.5 square bill or something bigger or heavier, then I will change to more of a medium heavy setup with something closer to, 15-pound fluorocarbon. Usually something a little bit closer to like my chatterbait setup, more of like a medium heavy moderate. But yeah. Michael Bradley, where in Colorado? My sister's in Longmont. So Longmont's about an hour north of me. One of my children is calling. Hello? Brooklyn or Sadie? Dagnabbit. Sadie, you gotta go to bed, babe. Dear Lord. Guys, wish me luck tonight. You know what? That deserves a little swig straight out of the bottle. You know what, Matt? Matt notices the ticking noise. I'm not getting it fixed. I'm just going to wreck it or leave it, you know? Daniel and Matt, you just can't help it. Anyway, that literally does it for the Cabela's order that showed up at the store today. Was just 6 of those tiny OGs and 1 of the Berkeley Fritzside 5 in the junior. So the other night we unboxed my package from Discount Tackle for the month. And obviously the highlight from that package was this guy right here in the Lucky Craft LV 150. A downsized version of their LV 500 lipless crankbait that is made to be the same size as a traditional lipless crankbait at 2.5 inches and 1/2 ounce in size. So I am super pumped to have that bait in my arsenal and put to work pretty aggressively, in addition to, say, the Jackal TN60, because really until now I was really only sitting on the LV500 and the TN70, and those are big baits that are meant to be a little bit more uh, retrieve specific within the technique of throwing a lipless crankbait. So I'm excited to have these higher end lipless crankbaits in more of a traditional size, where I will still do that and let it fall to the bottom and work it more slowly, ripping it up off the bottom. But I will also fish it on a straight retrieve, yo-yo it through the middle of the water column, really mix it up and let these baits shine and do everything that they can do for me. Whereas I used to fish different lipless crankbaits for different styles of retrieve, if that makes sense. Dang it, Eliza notices the clicking now. I have to keep talking so that you guys don't hear that. And I promise, since it bothers so many of you guys, I will get it taken care of sooner than later. So sorry about that, guys. Daniel says it's the longest bomb timer ever. Yeah, hopefully the bomb never goes off, if we're being honest. But yeah, it it feels like the ticking is getting louder. I don't know what's going on. Maybe it wants me to smash the box over there, but hopefully it doesn't bother you guys too bad. For all of you who are coming from Debo's channel, I opened this package like a week ago. I did a little trade with Debo after he had me on his live stream a month or two ago. I sent him some Megabass jerk baits, and he sent me this custom painted bait of his, a knockoff of the DRT Tiny Clash. And this is a bait that I'm very excited to put to work this year. So this is one where I will most likely throw this in the post spawn and the early summer, as well as in the fall. But I suppose there's an opportunity to throw this in the pre-spawn as well. It's just with this baby bass pattern, I'll probably throw it a little bit less in pre-spawn than, say, the original Tiny Clash, which my desk is such a mess that I don't know where it's sitting at the moment. I would show you guys that color pattern if I saw it, but Matt says, Tyler, do you do a lot of bait molds like on cranks by weighting them down, or mods by weighting them down or shaving the bill down? I shave down some storm lightning shads and turn one into a square bill. They usually have a round bill. I don't do a lot of that, I will say that. I definitely do more mods in the way of weighting and hook swapping and changing out split rings. Sometimes I will double the split rings if it's a bait that I think is more prone to a fish throwing the hooks, just so you can get a little extra rotation out of it. But I will definitely swap hooks, usually for the sake of just putting on higher quality hooks or ones that I have more confidence in. But some baits that, say, are floating, I will add suspend dots or suspend strips to. I don't use lead wire. But other than that, I pretty much just swap the hooks. I really don't ever shave a bill. You know, that's an interesting concept, is to take something with a round bill and sand it down so that it becomes a squared off type of lip, you know, like you'd see in this Fritz side. But no, I don't do that. That's an interesting question, and something that I haven't really considered before. So thank you for bringing that up. That's definitely interesting. Daniel says, does that blank come from Do It? No, it doesn't. I know that Debo buys it from one of the, there's like 5 or more places that people buy a lot of lure blanks from, and I forget which one it is specifically that sells the tiny clash blanks. These are like $10, and then Debo does his magic on them, which I'm sure is probably a couple hours worth of work. Um, Maybe not quite that, but then of course you've got the clear coating and all of that. So it is a lot of work that goes into custom painting baits, and I think he charges right around $50 for these. And then the original Tiny Clash from DRT retails at like $109, 110, something like that. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. This color pattern is just so wicked. You guys probably can't see all of that color shift on there and all the different layers that he has put on, where there's these gold dots below. He's done so many. He used like probably 5 different stencils on this bait. He's got the gill plate, and it's really cool because this is like a hybrid baby bass and rainbow trout at the same time. And yeah, he did it very well. So I'm excited about that, and I probably would have paid the $50 for it, but when he had me on live last time, he told me that not only does he not throw the Megabass Vision 110, but that he doesn't own any. And I volunteered in that moment. I said, dude, I will send you a couple of them. You got to have them. You got to try them and kind of know what makes them different. But he was resistant, and so it took a little convincing, and for me to offer to trade him for that to happen. So I sent him, I think, 3 Vision 110 jerk baits. Maybe 2 were standard Vision 110s, and 1 was a junior, all in like the regular diving depth, because I know he's a bank angler. He still told me that he probably intends to throw them from the boat. I think he's just scared to throw them, but Eliza says, I just started throwing the S Waver, and that thing is a workout. Don't know how y'all throw those all day. Oh, I don't know about the S Waver being a workout. There are definitely some baits that are more of a workout than others. Unless you've got the S Waver 200, then sure, I can understand that. You know, once you step up to baits that are like, 2.5, 3 ounces and heavier, then absolutely it becomes more of a workout. But if you're using something smaller, and I would say that an S Waver 168 fits into that category, it's really not too bad. You need to have the right gear to be able to throw it. So if you have a swim bait rod and a big reel, it's not too bad. But throwing it all day, sure. The thing for me is that I'm rarely out on the water for more than 3 or 4 hours at a time. I fish when I can, before work, after work, during my lunch break, things like that. And so I'm usually out for like a 2-hour session, and a swim bait rarely is the dominating bait for me. And that's just part of the deal. You'll find some people like Matthew Acevedo, who's in the chat, throws like 80 or 90% swim baits, and so it's a different ball game for him because he is throwing them day in and day out and for long periods of time. But for me, I'm just trying to maximize the experience, catch as many fish as I can, while also learning as much as I can and try new techniques. So it's a little bit of everything for me. But I find that if you stay in the range of like, a Gantarelle Junior or an S Waver, something that's like an ounce and a half, 2 ounces, or even less, that you're not really going to have those fatigue issues nearly as much. And you barely even need a dedicated setup to throw them. But you're right that this tiny clash is, I don't know, probably more like 2.5 ounces. I don't think it's pushing 3, but it is a bigger bait. and I do intend to throw it a fair amount this year. So will require getting a little bit used to it. But, same could be said for a lot of different techniques when you're throwing oversized baits. For example, we talked about the big blade chatterbait a little bit on Debo's live stream toward the tail toward the tail end of that stream. This guy right here is an oversized lipless crankbait made by Duo Realis. It's the Apex Vibe 100. This is a 4-inch and like 1.25 ounce lipless crankbait. Those kind of things need to be thrown on heavy power fast action rods as opposed to like a medium heavy fast or medium heavy moderate that would be more ordinary. So same can be applied to pretty much every technique from swim baits and top waters, jerk baits, crankbaits, everything. So yeah, I hear you. Sorry, needed to clear my throat pretty bad there. Yeah, Matt would say that the DRT Ghost will destroy your shoulder, but yeah, that thing is like, how much does that thing weigh, Matt? Is that 6 ounces or is that like 12 ounces? Of course, it will destroy your shoulder. If you're not a young person, that's a mistake trying to throw something like that. I mean, you need to have an extra heavy swim bait rod. Um, that's like 2 steps up from like an entry level swim bait rod. And I just have more of like an entry level swim bait rod, the Dobbins Fury 795 SB, which is a 7'9" 5-power rod. So it's a medium heavy swim bait rod. So it loads up pretty well. It handles lures from 1 to 4 ounces, but really its sweet spot is in that 2 to 3 ounce range. You really can't push the upper end of the rating there. Otherwise, it is going to feel like you're loading that rod too much on the back cast. Plus, you'll find that when throwing any of those lures, even with the S waiver, Eliza, you're best off doing a lob cast with any of those. No matter what you're using it on, you rarely want to go over and huck that thing out there. So yeah. What you talking about, Rich? Oops. Who did it again? Where is Ron Holly? Earth to Ron Holly. Where you at, brother? All right. I don't really know where to take this stream at the moment right now. You guys help direct the stream. Ask me any and all questions that you have, whether it's along the same lines of what we're talking about swim bait wise, or we switch gears and go to, I don't know who it was, Daniel or somebody else asked specifically about pre-spawn baits. I'm happy to talk about either one or whatever you guys want to talk about. Philip Cheek in the house. What's up, dude? Says the Fury 795 SB is the one I use. It's money, but yeah, I don't overload it. Yeah, same deal. I use 2 reels on it, one with straight fluoro and one with braid to a leader, sometimes mono, sometimes fluoro, depending on the bait that I'm using. But yeah, I think the reel matters just as much. So I use a Shimano Tranx 300 on it, which is almost too much for that 795 SB. It will transfer really well when I step up to something like the 806 or something comparable that will handle lures in that next category, next range of weights that is more like that 4 to 8 ounce range. So, yeah, that was a rod that I was strongly considering getting around the holidays, but just dilly dallied when the Tackle Warehouse sale was going on because that thing was on sale for the entire time, and it sold out before I could pull the trigger on it. So I missed the boat on that, but not too big of a deal considering I don't have many baits that are, at the point of overloading my 795 at the moment. So Ron Holly, what? Why the wrapper pants? That's a good question, man. I really don't have an answer for you as to the wardrobe that I've got on right now. None of this stuff is super typical for me. I've got a hoodie on from my college days over 10 years ago. This is a new hat that I got just last year at a golf tournament. And, I'm not a big Oakley guy. And then I'm wearing sports shorts right now, just kind of staying comfy, dude. It's still cold. It snowed 2 days ago here in Colorado. Was relatively warm today, but I changed out of my jeans and shirt a couple of hours ago while hanging out with my kids. So good question, but I can't answer it, man. Eliza's throwing low down custom rods. That is fancy. Ron, I did not order my Agent E's. When we did what do we call it, Ron? Um, Must or bust. I said the Agent E is a bust. I'm really not interested in that bait, though I did look at it not too long ago, and I was a little bit tempted uh, to pick one or two up, but ultimately, no, dude. I don't think I'm gonna use that bait. Really, no reason to do so when this is the only one that I do use and have confidence in. And even still, I don't use it religiously. So, um, this is not a category of baits that I see myself getting super into. I will just use one or the other. I like the fact that it is a hybrid style bait, bridging the gap between a jig, a tube, a swim bait, all of that. But to be honest, I will just do one of those techniques if I'm looking to target fish that are on the bottom. Uh, whether I'm throwing a single swim bait low and slow, close to the bottom, or I'm throwing a jig um, on the bottom. It's pretty much what you get there. Same with the tube. I'll rip that up off a bottom. Um, Although the hollow body tube doesn't get a ton of usage for me, or at least hasn't over the last 2 seasons. 3 seasons ago, it did pretty well for me in catching some smallmouth, but I lost a bunch of tube jig heads and didn't really stock up. Just found other ways to catch them. I like to keep switching it up. You guys know that. Well, Eliza, I respect the fact that you're trying to turn people on to Florida companies, which is why you mentioned Bull Bay LMG rods all the time. Interesting. I didn't know that. I'm not a heavy contributor in the chat of other people's live streams. I like to jump in and um, and be in there for a short period of time. But as you guys know from 2 times already on this stream, I have young kids. This is the reason that I stream as late as I'm on right now. It's only 10 o'clock my time here in Colorado right now. So for those of you on the East Coast, it's midnight. It's late. I get it. A lot of you guys are on the East Coast, and that's late. So this is literally like the late night show. But I've got kids, and their bedtime is 7:30, pushing 8 o'clock. So I can't get on here until 9 o'clock, especially when they struggle to actually go to sleep. So you've seen that already. And Matt says if someone wants to get a toxic mini trucha crankdown, nobody knows about these baits, dude, or the Hero Gorilla Gill glide from Japan. I'm selling both of them for less than retail. Matt did that on the last stream too. He's trying to flip some baits. Uh, I shouldn't say flip. He's trying to sell some of his baits, and nobody ever knows what these baits are that Matt uses. He's into the rare stuff, the one-off bait makers, and yeah. So if somehow, some way, one of you 17 people know those baits and want them, then hit up Matt. by all means. Daniel says, seen Matt Steffen talking about cutting that weed guard off the Agent E. Interesting. I thought the weed guard was one of the differentiators about the Agent E, and the reason that you would get it over like a dark sleeper. I don't know why you'd cut that weed guard off unless it is counterproductive and that weed guard actually impedes the hook set, which I have. Um, I've talked about the opposite with the dark sleeper in that this weed guard, or I should say this top fin, does not act as a weed guard. This thing gets stuck on anything and everything. That what you need to do instead is actually like um expose the hook into one side of the fin, and then all of a sudden, boom, this thing is weedless. So that's a hack with the dark sleeper in getting it to hang up a little bit less frequently. But yeah, I find that that's a problem with those baits, just like it is with a tube, and with how expensive they are at 5, 6, $8. I don't know what the Agent E's are. Maybe they're a little bit less expensive, like $5 or $6. The Dark Sleeper is 6, 7, $8. The one made by Ketchco, whatever it's called, the Headhunter, is like $10. Those baits are all pretty expensive for what they are, at least in my opinion right now. So, uh, Ron asked a question a minute ago. Okay, Yum, Zoom, or Robo Worm for stick baits. Uh, okay, if we're talking strictly stick baits, I assume you're talking about a straight, like Senko style worm. I personally would go with Robo Worm because, in my opinion, the three baits that we're talking about are the Yum Dinger, the Zoom Zlinky, or the Robo Worm uh, Nedworm 4.5. Of course, we could branch way out from there and go to like trick worm or finesse worm style baits and drop shot worms, 6-inch straight tail worms, and we go way down the rabbit hole. But for those baits, I would choose the 4.5-inch Robo Worm Nedworm like every time. I really like that bait. I like the salt content. I like the way that it falls, and I like the price tag on it. So the Yum Dinger is a super slow fall bait. So to me, it's a little bit more specific to really shallow water or bed fishing scenarios for me. Um, Maybe a Nico rig, depending on the situation. The Zoom's Linky, I haven't even tried, and I'm not all that interested. Zoom has come out with a number of baits over the last handful of years that really just are for the sake of competing or throwing a bait out there to the market that fits a category that they did not already fulfill. And for the most part, I'm not into that. Now, the Zoom Beatdown, their Nedworm that is 3.5 inches, I do like that bait. So that's an exception to that. But the Robo Worm Nedworm is fat. It's really good on a wacky rig, has a nice medium speed fall to it. And I really like it on a Nico rig too. So that's the one that I would go with. But again, that's just assuming we're talking about Senko style stick baits. Ruben says it's not easy with little ones. Always something. I hear you, man. And I would agree. So far, that's the way it is for me. I've got a 6-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a not quite 1-year-old. So it is always something with me. But that said, I do still manage to make it on here once a week. And that's why most of my videos here in the last couple of years on YouTube have been live streams as opposed to individual videos, especially on the water fishing videos. I do make some unboxing videos or rigging videos or tips videos, but haven't done much of that in a long while. And that's why my channel is sitting pretty stagnant at like 3,000 subscribers. But I'm not too worried about the size of my audience. Of course, it would be nice to make more in ad revenue from YouTube, but that's not really my priority here, as so much as just being part of a community, getting to hang out with you guys, talk fishing, learn from one another, and share some of the knowledge that I've acquired over the last 5 to 7 years since becoming an absolutely diehard bass fishing fanatic. So, Eliza says, I've always been finesse and have been forcing myself to learn power fishing, and I find it frustrating at times. I could work a trick worm all day. Yeah, well, on my video from Thursday night, we talked about the trick worm. I just picked up a pack of the methylate trick worm. Um, I've got this bait in a number of colors already, and I throw this style bait in a couple different brands and for different styles of fishing. But yeah, trickworm is a great option. But I'm a little bit surprised to hear that you live in Florida and are a finesse fisherwoman, uh, that you've had to learn to power fish. That's kind of surprising to me. Matt says, Trucha is a trout style bait. I have it in a shad color. He isn't making anymore. It's got a purple hyper shift, and the gorilla is purple with a gold belly gill pattern. Ron, I believe you, man. Um, I try as much as possible to cherish all of the good and bad that comes with having really young kids. And I already feel like time is flying by. The last 6 years have gone by super quick. Seeing my daughter go from 0 to 6 and being in kindergarten already makes me scared, especially when she's talking about how she's got a crush on this dude Nolan in her kindergarten class, and he's got a crush on her too. I'm like, oh, don't tell me she better not kiss this kid. At her age, I had already kissed a girl, and I hope that I'm not having to deal with that sooner than later. But yeah, I mean, sometimes I want to slow things down. Sometimes um, I want to go back in time, but I don't really want to speed things up. So you're absolutely right. I know that in, you know, 25 years from now, 30 years from now, I will be just looking back at everything as memories, precious time that we had, and that I'm sad that we don't get to have anymore. So I am trying to enjoy every moment of it right now. Eliza says, "Thought I heard that Nolan kid was bad news." Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I told her that I was going to need to meet the kid, um, especially when he told her that he had a crush on her. And he's a funny guy. Apparently, sounds like he's a little bit of a class clown. All the kids are getting loose teeth right now, and he's the kid that's banging his head on the table trying to loosen his tooth and lose it at school. But eats his boogers. You might be right about that. Um, yeah, I need to probably arrange some sort of intervention, sit this kid down, and either talk some sense into him or scare him off. You know what I mean? I'm gonna be that kind of dad that's definitely a little bit aggressive with the boys that go after my daughters, because I've got a 6 and 3 year old girls, and then a 1 year old boy. So odds are he's not going to be able to defend his older sisters that are 2.5 and 5 years older than him. odds are that's going to be me laying down the hammer. Abe says, preach, Ron. I'm about to crack this second beer. We are 1 hour into this stream on the dot right now. Thank you guys for hanging out right now. Having a good time, even though we're not really talking fishing at the moment. Feel free to ask any questions that you have. Matt says, what's the baits that you start with when the water is still cold? That's grammatically incorrect, but a jerk bait is probably the most obvious. A flat-sided crankbait is one. A lipless crankbait and or a blade bait is one. And then I will soak some soft plastics, throw a drop shot or a Ned rig, something that's going to move quite a bit slower. But I just accept the fact that those times I'm going to catch fewer fish. I'm trying to switch up my techniques for this year and try and figure out exactly what depth the fish are at, to be able to figure out when they're moving up. And that's a little bit trickier, but I'm going to do that by throwing more crankbaits than say a chatterbait or a soft plastic on a Texas rig. So that said, I say that now, and we'll see what happens in a month from now as we get closer to open water for me, because that could totally change. But as things start to heat up, the chatterbait becomes like absolutely a priority for me. We rigged these two on the last stream the other night. I mean, what perfect pairings are these guys? This is the Jackhammer Chatterbait in my two favorite craw colors. This is the Heights Hot Craw, green pumpkin back, red belly, with a Rage Menace grub in the Falcon Lake Craw color. Perfect match. And then this is the Fire Craw Jackhammer with a Delta Red Kitech Crazy Flapper on the back. And this is better for dirtier water and or when you want a slightly more aggressive kicking action. And so those situations will come into play pretty quickly come like the middle of pre-spawn all the way up to the spawn. Michael Bradley, I appreciate that. Soak it in. Goes by so fast. My daughter's 22 now. Man, I do not look forward to those days, but I really look forward to the next 16 years that I have before my oldest daughter is 22. So, yeah, I'm going to soak it in as much as I can, man. Thank you for the encouragement. Eliza says, okay, your PB was caught on what bait? PB was caught on a Whopper Plopper 110. This was almost 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago. And honestly, I'm here in Colorado, so it was probably a 5.5 pounder, not a giant fish. I've only caught a handful of fish over 5 pounds. I've caught a bunch of 4s, but most of the fish that I catch are 2s and 3s, and I catch a fair amount of dinks smaller than that. So this past year, I caught a 5 on a chatterbait, a white Jackhammer Chatterbait toward the end of the season. But yeah, good question. Elijah says lipless or fluke here in Florida, as the water temperature rarely gets below 58 or so. Wow. It will take until the middle or end of May for the water to hit 58. Most of the fish here in Colorado are spawning at the end of May and all of June. Some a little bit earlier than that, but some even later than that. So the spawn for me is from late April until the end of June. It's a much longer window of time, but that's because our water's frozen right now and won't be um, thawed until toward the end of March. And so April is cold. Our water temps are in the 40s, and then it jumps up pretty quickly after that. Um, as we start getting warmer air temps as well. It really is the nighttime air temperatures that matter. So, like, we had a warm day today. It was probably 50, 55 degrees. So, a lot of the snow on the ground was melting. But right now, it's 35 and it's going to drop to 28. That's very typical. Um, the lows for the rest of this week, tomorrow night, the low is going to be 33, but Monday it's going to be 9, Tuesday -1, Wednesday 2, Thursday 1, Friday -2, Saturday 6, next Sunday 15, next Monday 20. So we're definitely still in the dead of winter, and it's when those low temps start, plateauing at like 40 degrees, that becomes a little bit more stable and the water temps start warming. But you're right that a fluke is um is a great bait to throw when the water's cold. Soft plastic jerk bait, right? I said a jerk bait, but I did not specify that a soft plastic jerk bait is a great one to throw for sure. Coogan Slayer says my OSP jerks came. Well, right on. Good for you, man. That's exciting. Eliza says, or the chatterbait. You throw chatterbait a lot year round. I hear you. I throw the chatterbait more than anything. Um, and I'm not ashamed to say so. I throw chatterbait literally every time I go out fishing. I have too much confidence in a chatterbait these days. And until people catch on and the fish catch on, I'm going to keep doing it just because it's too good. Like I said, I'm only out for a limited period of time every time I go fishing, and that is like the way that is my highest percentage opportunity to catch fish. So I absolutely love a chatterbait. Guys, we got 21 people in here right now. It's a busy Saturday night. Appreciate you guys hanging out. 19 thumbs up. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up button, and jump in the chat if you're not already uh, hanging out with us. Let me catch up on these comments. Ron, yeah, I check grammar. I just don't always comment on it. Bait and Switch says, of those lures you just mentioned, do you have the exact ones that you plan to use? Are you talking about early season baits when I mentioned jerk baits, lipless crankbaits, uh, blade baits, chatterbaits, swim baits even fall into that category? I do, but that's a lot to go over. So if you ask something a little bit more specific for me to narrow it down for you, then absolutely, I'm happy to do so. Adam Odin in the house. Better late than never. You're right about that, man. Good to have you in here. Ruben says his daughter's 18. Still remember bringing her home and driving very carefully. I hear you on that. It was only 6 years ago for me, but I remember that. No doubt about it. Loading a car seat into the back of a car for the first time and realizing that you've got another human's life in your hands, that is your responsibility, that it's a different feeling than just driving with a friend or a spouse or another relative, somebody that knows what they're getting themselves into. But driving with a baby in the back seat is intense. Philip says, yeah, but what's the Colorado state record? It's all relative. You're right about that. Colorado state record for largemouth is like 11 and change for largemouth and mid sevens for smallmouth. So yeah, I mean a 6 pounder is a good largemouth for sure. Especially when I'm not traveling very far. I'm fishing metro ponds, lakes, reservoirs, and they're all relatively small bodies of water. If and when I do get a boat, I'm probably going to get something with an electric motor or something that is low horsepower because, generally speaking, the larger bodies of water that I fish are like, you know, 1,500 acres, maybe. But most that I fish are significantly smaller than that. So, Eliza says temps are mid 60s to high 60s right now. Wow. So the fish are definitely bedding. That's crazy. Daniel says he doesn't know the weight of his PB bass, but it was 24 inches on a night crawler while catfishing. Wow. Hard to call that a PB, but I hear you. Matt says our state record is 10-11 here in Jersey. Okay. Philip says he's going fishing at sunup, 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Why am I still watching YouTube? I don't know, Philip. Feel free to get out of here at any time, dude. Um, you haven't been on this channel before, but as you'll find out in a few minutes, I have to leave for a pee break like once every live stream, sometimes more than that. I'm usually on here for about 2 hours on average. I hop on here and say that I'm going to be on for a short period of time, maybe an hour at most. It usually turns into two, sometimes even longer than that. So uh, I've got some thunder mugs, some cups down here that I will pee into, so that I don't always have to run upstairs to go pee. I'm in the basement of my house, but as I'm drinking beers and whiskey, things like that, can't help it. I gotta pee. I don't know about all these other guys who stream for hours and hours and never have to leave, but that's not me, man. So, Philip, feel free to leave at any point in time. But I super appreciate you hanging out in here. Um, it's fun to have you guys, especially the ones of you who are not ordinarily in here. Ruben, all we can do is set them up for success and pray for the rest. You're absolutely right about that when it comes to children. Still nervous though. Eliza says, been forcing myself to throw the chatterbait. Well, yeah, if you saw in Debo's live chat, Matthew Acevedo, who was actually logged in as South Jersey Fisherman 028, I believe, over there, was saying that the chatterbait is one that he plans to throw more this upcoming season. Hasn't had a lot of confidence in the past, but plans to use more and more moving forward. And yeah, I think you're wise to do so because the chatterbait is one of the fish catchingest lures out there. I don't want to say that it's underrated because everybody uses it. It's not underrated, but um, it's an awesome bait. You got to use it, and I will say not the original chatterbait. Okay, Ruben says, "What's your favorite trailer for a chatter?" Man, that is tough to answer. I've got a couple videos on chatterbait trailers specifically, but it depends on the season and um, what you're trying to imitate, whether it's a craw or a bait fish. And even within bait fish, whether you're trying to imitate more of a bluegill or a shad. So I would say that the Yamamoto Seiko is still my number one trailer. But starting last season, the Z-Man Goat really jumped up on my list in terms of chatterbait trailers because of its versatility. So for a really long time, this Strike King Rage Menace grub was like my go-to chatterbait trailer because you can rig it like this to imitate a craw, or you can flip it so that the kickers are more vertical than horizontal, and you get this bait fish type of swim and kick out of it. And the Z-Man Goat does the exact same thing. So I've got the Z-Man Goat in like, 5 different colors in here. I've got the Turbo Craws from Z-Man. And then I've got the Razor Shads, which is essentially the same thing as a Yamamoto Seiko. So I like a Laztec on the back of a chatterbait, especially like a jackhammer, because of that double wire weed guard. It will hold that Elastec on there for so long that you don't have to trade baits. You can bet your bottom dollar that you're not going to lose a trailer on the same day of fishing. So it's awesome to not have to carry those around with you. Another one that is underrated is something like a Zoom Fluke. This is the Strike King Z2, which is essentially the Super Fluke, but made from a Laztec. Z-Man makes one too called the Streaks. But yeah, hang tight, guys. That right after I mentioned the P, like it came up on me quick. It's gonna be quick though, all right? And I'm hoping that you can't hear it, which is why I'm talking right this second. But I'm looking at a couple baits that I'm gonna show you in about 15 seconds when I'm done here. Maybe a couple bladed jigs. That Robo worm, Nedworm I was just talking about, since Ron Holly asked. Reasonably high volume of piss there. All right. So here's that Robo worm Nedworm I was talking about. You can see it's a pretty fat bait, but 4.5 inches, so it's relatively short. A little bit shorter than you'd get out of the Zoom Slinky or the Yum Dinger in like a traditional 5-inch size, but it's a good one. Got a bunch of chatterbaits that we can talk about if you want to. But Ruben, I hope I answered your question. I'm not sure if I did, but kind of depends, man. I would say the Yamamoto Seiko or the Z-Man Razor Shads are probably my main two, just because they imitate a shad or a bait fish, and it's got such a subtle kicking action from that segmented straight tail bait behind the chatterbait. I really do like that, but there's situations where I will go more aggressive and throw something like that Kitech Crazy Flapper or the Z-Man Turbo Craws or the Zoom UV Speed Craw. All of those baits have a really good kicking action that are awesome on a swim jig and also a chatterbait. So they don't necessarily just have to be to imitate a crawdad, but do that really well if you're fishing low and slower, or just fishing a heavier weight and fishing it fast with a chatterbait, or you're ripping it more than just on a straight retrieve and kind of pumping the reel, doing different stuff to mix up the retrieve. So Robin Allen says, "Where's the bourbon?" I don't have bourbon, but I've got the rye from the other night. Stellum Rye. This is a single barrel. I've got a little bit. Spicy too. I reviewed that at the very end of my live stream the other night and made a fool out of myself. If you guys watch Dave Portnoy from Barstool Sports and his pizza reviews, I reviewed this bourbon in that format. I think I gave it a 7.2. I just called it a bourbon. It's a rye. But yeah, pretty hilarious. I got kind of drunk at the end of the stream on Thursday night. Daniel says, I find I get the best responses on a chatterbait on a 6-to-1 reel and a medium heavy / heavy rod, a little bit stiff. Dude, I don't know about that. I'm not necessarily in that same camp. Wow, I'm behind on comments. Holy crap. What in the heck? I don't even know how to get caught up. I'm gonna have to just fly through this. Sorry, guys. Bait and Switch says, just wondering when you get your box of baits ready for your first spring trip. Um, Literally, I load stuff like the day or two before I am going to go for the first time because what I bring depends on the body of water that I'm going to fish. I fish probably 10 or 15 different bodies of water here in um, my local area that are about 30 minutes of a drive from here. There are maybe 3 or 4 that I fish more frequently than the rest, but I throw different stuff at all of those because some are heavy on shad and have riprap banks. Some are heavy on bluegill and are like really weedy, and some are heavy on perch and have a little bit of everything. So I kind of have to mix up what it is that I'm loading my stuff up with, depending on where I'm going. Robin says, "What's the one lure / rig that you're going to work on this year?" Um, wow, that's pretty broad because there's a lot that I'm going to focus on when it comes to lures. But if I were to specify a technique, um, great question, man. I would probably say um, topwater walking baits. That's one that just kind of gets thrown by the wayside for me a little bit. I talked to some about how our temperatures slowly rise here in Colorado. So the spawn isn't really in full swing until May and June, which means that our topwater season doesn't really get hot until late July. And so it's August and September where topwater is the deal. And I find that I do just as well on a Whopper Plopper and on a popper and on a wake bait, uh, more so than a frog, a buzz bait, a walking bait. And so there are some of those topwater techniques that I want to be able to focus more on. And then, of course, you know, the swim bait. Uh, Large, hard plastic swim baits like this guy. I would say of all the baits out there, the Tiny Clash is the one that I want to get to know the best this year. So when it comes to hard swim baits, I will throw this bait a lot more than the rest of my glide baits or hard swim baits. It will take priority for a while, if not most of the year this year. But good question, man. Let me skip through these PBs. I'm sorry, guys, that I'm not addressing them. Because I need to get past the Thunder Mug situation. And there's Ron with his Thunder Mug comment. Yeah, man. Daniel says 5 pounds is big here. Yeah, me too. All right, all right, all right. Philip Cheek is still in here. No, I mean measured inches, then weight compared to relative weight. In South Carolina, my pond's constantly yielding 75 to 80% of national average. So your 24-inch might very well be much heavier than mine. That's a good point. It's a good point. Guggen Slayer says my top bait last year was just cutting a 4-inch Yamamoto on a small Ned head. So did you have a larger Senko that you cut down to 4 inches? Or did you take a 4-inch bait and cut it down even smaller to put on a Ned head? I assume it's the latter, but I don't know. Yeah, you guys definitely are on fire in the comments tonight, Daniel. It's hard for me to keep up. You know, technically, there's only 15 of you in here, and it just dropped to 12, but you guys are going faster than I can keep up with. So I can't imagine what it's like for someone like Debo, where the chat is just like bop, 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 bop. Very hard to keep up. You're just missing so many comments. All right, Eliza is out of here. Fishing tomorrow morning, so she needs to grab some rest. Well, good for you fishing tomorrow. Just know we are all jealous and we are all appreciative that you came to this stream, hung out for as long as you did. We're about an hour and a half in. So thank you so much for the support and for being a part of this community. We'd love to have you back anytime that you want to hang out. All good guys in here, good conversation, and no judgment ever passed. So thank you so much for subscribing. Look forward to seeing you next time. All right. Good luck on the water tomorrow. Hope you catch them good. Matt says, what is your most confident jerk bait that you use? Well, we talked about that recently, but I hate to say it. It is the Megabass Vision 110 early season. Okay. And I throw a jerk bait more early season than the rest of the year. But after that, honestly, it's probably either the Lucky Craft Pointer or the Rapala Ripstop. And I know all three of those baits are so different. So don't ask me why specifically, but the Vision 110 is great early season because it suspends so well in cold water, has that action that will cause reaction bites when you need it. Whereas the pointer has a very erratic and loud action that is great for aggressive fish year round, but really from the middle of pre-spawn on through the fall. And then the ripstop I love for being a shallow water bait, one that you can hit super hard. And I've been able to throw on those bladed trebles on the middle hook of those larger size ripstop. I think it's the 11 size. And it has a super slow fall with that blade on it, but really, really like it. So, yeah, I don't know. Those are the first three that come to my mind, man. Daniel says, oh, yeah, I just found a bunch of colors back in stock of the Tiny OG4. Well, right on, man. Yeah, I would say after getting my hands on them and seeing them in person, holding them, I can already guarantee you I'm going to like this bait. I love how narrow this thing is. I love the rounded profile on it. I'm into this thing. I'm going to throw it a lot. This immediately jumps up in my arsenal. As for baits that I will throw a fair amount early in the spring when the water is cold, alongside the Evergreen Flat Force and the Berkeley Fritz Side 5 Junior, which I showed you here. Got a couple other colors of this guy. So those are going to be ones that I put to work a lot early in the spring when fishing from the bank, where I'm still trying to parallel banks and keep the bait relatively shallow. So, some of these baits that dive in that 6+ feet range are going to hit the back burner for me a little bit this season. Most likely, but we'll see about that. Ron says, I would be okay catching a 5-pounder. Yeah, no doubt, considering your name is Bassless Chap. Wouldn't you be okay catching a 2-pounder, man? Pickle throw. Justin in the house. What's up, Justin? How you doing tonight? Matt says, nice. You might want to try getting into skin painting. Okay, you guys are talking about making baits. All right. And there's Ron. Yeah, I would be okay catching a 0.05 pounder. That's hilarious. And Daniel says, I bet I have the record for a smallest bass on the 1.5 crankbait. No, I mean, a 1.5 crankbait is a good overall size where it will catch tiny fish and it will catch big fish too. So, no doubt. I much prefer a 1.5 size square bill over a 2.5 or bigger. Though there are, a time and a place for throwing a big square bill crankbait. I don't do it all that frequently. And I've actually gotten into throwing the small 1.0 square bill, but yeah, the 1.5 it's got to be everybody's go-to, It's a very standard small bodied square bill crankbait, but that point or the 1.0 square bill is underrated and definitely worth a look. So if you don't already throw those, check them out, and you might even break your record of, say, the smallest bass caught on a square bill crankbait. Ruben says, what length rod do you use for the jerkbait? I use a 610, maybe it's a 6.9, but I do prefer a slightly shorter rod. Although I wouldn't say that's shorter than is average. I like to throw it on a bait caster. And yeah, 6.9 medium, fast action. Every now and again with small jerk baits that are 2-hook jerk baits, say the pointer 78 and smaller than that, I will throw on a spinning setup most of the time. Justin says, I'm going to send you my ripstop. I literally never use it. Well, dude, I've got a lot of ripstops. Is it the smaller size or the big size? And odds are you should probably give that to somebody else. But actually, you should probably just start using it, man. Guggen Slayer says, I'm getting to know my 3-piece Sherpa swim bait this year, but my reel for it is messed up, and just found out. But my other 6 reels are dry to slay. Okay. Well, right on. I don't know anything about the Sherpa swim bait, but cool. Guggen Slayer says, jerks catch bigs. Yeah, that's true. I would say that the average fish that I catch on jerk baits is larger than with a lot of other baits as well. So, yeah, you're right. Grayson says, okay, you guys are still talking about making baits. Robin says, I use the Zara Spook. What do you mainly use as a walking bait? I don't mainly use one specific bait for a walking bait. I use a lot. I think I had my walking bait box out last stream. But here's my walking baits. You can see I've got the Zara Spook here and here So this is the regular spook. This is the Super Spook Junior. I do throw them, but I'll go to giant walking baits, and I will go to small walking baits. It all depends on the scenario and the fish that I'm around. But I mentioned on the last stream that I've moved to something like the Tackle Kick Knocker. This is the Kick Knocker Junior, which isn't wanting to focus well for you. Awesome color pattern there. You know, it's an expensive bait, so it's hard to recommend it to the average person or to everybody. If you want to get something a little bit cheaper, the Striking Sexy Dog is a great one. That's the Sexy Dog Junior. I do throw their standard size Sexy Dog in the regular and the hard knock. That's the hard knock. But like I talked about last stream, the Lucky Craft Sammy 105. This is a 3-hook jerkbait that retails at $10. So it's cheaper than the original Sammy, which is a 2-hook, slightly larger bait at 115 millimeters. This bait is $16, whereas the Sammy 105 is this guy right here. It's $10. So very, very good bait, as well as the Lucky Craft Gunfish, really good bait. Those are two that have gotten a lot of use for me in the last handful of years. But again, it all comes down to technique and the situation that I'm in, because I might go to something like the Evergreen Shower Blows if I'm fishing around more targeted pieces of cover and I want a walking bait that has a cupped face and tends to walk in place more than to cover water and skitter on the surface. So you know, that Sammy is going to do a really good job of covering water, just like that Tackle Kick Knocker I mentioned. Whereas when you go to the Gunfish, you get a middle of the road action where you get it throwing some water, but also covering a reasonable amount of water. And then you go all the way to, you know, the Evergreen Shower Blows, and you get something that's not going to cover a lot of water, but rather kind of walk in place. And yeah, that's where you're fishing a walking bait in the same places that you would like a popper, just a different technique. So it depends, man. And I'm sorry to not give you a direct answer on that, Robin, but I hope that gives you a little bit of insight. Daniel says, "Yeah, but my fish was barely longer than my crankbait." So you caught a 2 or 3 inch fish on a 1.5 size square bill. That's crazy. Matt says, "True that Ito Shiner and the Depth Bolly Song catch some big fish. Never have a fish under 3 pounds on them." If you keep mentioning that Depth's Bolly Song, I don't know if I'm going to go bonkers or if I'm just going to hop online and buy one. But you've said that enough times to where I feel like I know what it is, and I still have no idea. Yeah, Justin, that the paint jobs from Teckle are pretty sweet, no doubt. I've got a couple of the standard kick knockers and a couple of the juniors. They're all great. Daniel says, "I don't know that I catch more fish on them, but I like the sound of a hard knock better." Yes, same here. It's not my go-to. I throw a standard rattle first, and then a hard knock or a one knocker, and then a silent. Um, I don't know. I don't think I catch more fish on them. And Matt says, Tyler, you got to check out the Depths Mini NZ Crawler. It looks like a perfect size, and the new color looks sick. Well, I don't know jack about that, aside from the fact that it's a crawler bait. Is it the one that has like a really weird rounded body that's kind of long? And I think I know what bait you're talking about, but I don't know that I'm really all that interested in that bait, especially when I can imagine that it's 50 to $100. I mean, their new Whopper Plopper bait that just came out is $50, and I'm not going to get that, especially when I saw that you can bend the blade to tune it or affect the the frequency of the vibration that it puts out. That kind of freaks me out, and not something that I want. So yeah, a standard Whopper Plopper. One of the great things about it is that the tail is hard but pliable. You know what I mean? Uh, horrible example, but here's the tiny little Whopper Plopper 60. It's just the one sitting in front of me right now, but this is a hard plastic, and I can put a lot of force on this tail, and it will bend ever so slightly, and then it will come back. You know what I mean? If this was metal and you bend it and bend it back and bend it, it's gonna break, and you're $50 into a bait. You know, a regular Whopper Plopper is expensive enough as it is, but I don't know about, a lot of the baits that Depths makes are really expensive. That's just part of the game. Makes a clicking rattle noise due to the bumps in the rattle chamber. It's supposed to mimic the sound of a school of shad, says Matt. The catfish crawler, but mini version, probably is going to be $35 to $40. Well, that's somewhat reasonable for a Depths bait, I guess, but still not necessarily something that I'm looking to jump at in spending my money on. Especially when I think this year I'm gonna throw a lot more wake baits that are like uh, bait fish patterns or small body profiles. You guys know that last year I threw the uh, the KVD 2.5 wake bait a lot, and there are a handful of other wake baits that I'm looking to invest a little bit more time into this year. But yeah, the KVD 2.5 wake bait with that one knocker, um, I had some really good success on it. And you guys know that I have like overthrown the Spro Rat over, the last handful of years, in all of the sizes that they make in that bait. But I do really want to put more time into, say, like the 6 Sense. What do they call this bait again? The Speed Wake. I've got it in like 3 different colors, all for different situations. And I did not put it to work as much as I thought I would last year. And I've got like a few others in here, plus a bunch of others that are not in this box right now, including, say, a bait that I didn't really know of until recently that Epic Eric mentioned, and I've picked a couple up since then. But this is the Bass Pro Shops or XPS egg. Now this one I haven't changed the hooks out on. You can see that they put some funky stock hooks on this thing. So the hooks are in line so that this thing lays perfectly on the belly as it's swimming, but I don't like that style of treble hook, to be honest with you. And then even still as it is, these hooks get fouled very easily and need to be swapped out. So I've got this bait in a couple colors. This really is a wake bait. It dives down to a foot, and it's a super fat bait. But This is the smaller size. It's a 2-inch bait and still weighs 7/16 of an ounce. They make a larger size of this, which is a 3/4 ounce, and it's huge. But there are a number of other wake baits and super shallow crankbaits that I'm looking forward to throwing a lot this year. And yeah, I don't know that I'm gonna throw many crawlers, you know. Justin says, dude, Carl's has been low-key fire. I've been buying $11 jackhammers all winter. $5 credit for every plopper you buy. It's a ridiculous deal. Yep, I mean, go for it. While you've got the deal, you might as well. I've never been a member or subscriber at Carl's, but I can support that. You know, I have bought most of my jackhammers on the cheap, and $11 is a great deal. So I always support people stocking up on jackhammers, especially when you can find a good deal on them. So right on, man. And Matt said that price threw me off on the Evoke Zero. Yeah, that Whopper Plopper style bait, pretty pricey. Ron loves the Spro Rat in the Morning Dawn color. In fact, I probably need to send him one, if we're being honest, so that he can go night fishing this summer in Rhode Island and whack them on that thing. Matt's addicted to rats. Daniel says, I have that black and blue in the 6 cents Cloud 9 in my cart right now. Yeah, no, it's an awesome color, one that I have in so many different baits made by 6 cents. I was going to say, I think I might have some of the Cloud 9s in this box. This is like my rock crawler box, really. Ouch. Ouch. So here I've got it in the Curve 55, but I know I have it in the Cloud 9 C6, which is this bait right here, just a different bill on the bait and a slightly bigger body. But yeah, I've got that same black magic color in the Cloud 9 C6. I think I'm looking at it right now. Let me grab it for you, just so you can see it before you purchase. Yeah, I knew it. I knew it. There it is, Black Magic. It's got that frosted bill on it. So this is the C6. Shallow to medium diving crankbait. It's a good one. I like that low knocker rattle sound that a lot of 6 cents baits have. You know, the Curve 55 is a little bit rounder of a body and has a higher pitch rattle, and is made to be just a little bit more of like a wiggle wart style bait, with that body shape being quite a bit more rounded and fat than, say, the Cloud 9. So you can see the differences there. Ruben says, I'm going to throw more wake baits as well. Picked up a few of the 6 cents ones. Yeah. Yeah, 6 cents. I've also got their Movement 80 wake bait in a couple colors. This is the one that I've got sitting in the box right now. You know, they make the Movement 80X, which dives a couple feet deep, and then this 80 wake bait. And it's got a pretty wild action. I will say a lot of these 6 cents crankbaits are known to have very wild actions. And, you know, I think in some places that are like really heavily fished, that is an awesome thing. But for me, uh, it has not resulted in more bites necessarily because it almost spooks the fish off more when a a shallow diving crankbait like that that should be swimming like this or like this is swimming like this, you know, super erratic. And so I would say the Curve 55 is an exception to that. It does have a pretty standard swim to it, but a lot of like the movement baits from Six Sense have a very wild action to them. So keep that in mind. Justin says, "Can we talk about the new Mini Max?" Sure, man. I have not thrown this thing yet, so um, we can talk about it, but I can't talk based on experience. This thing has definitely a smaller blade than is average. Okay, let me show you just. Here's a Fire Craw Jackhammer. Here's a Fire Craw Mini Max. These are side by side. So the blade is probably 40% smaller. It's pretty significant. I want to say the hook is like a 2-aught, whereas a jackhammer, it's a 4-aught. You do get the hand-tied skirt on it, but you get a lead bait keeper on here instead of wire. Not necessarily a bad thing. I think it's good that the hook is still relatively heavy duty. But I have pretty high expectations for this thing and think it should do really well. I just have not felt it underwater. I personally think it's going to do significantly better than like the Stealth Blade Jackhammer or stepping down to a lot of the other smaller chatterbaits in the lineup. I think the Mini Max is going to be awesome, and I'm really excited to fish it this upcoming year. So it's going to get some use for me for sure. And while we're at it, I'll just go ahead and make the same pairing, but with a downsized version of the same trailer. I've got the 2.8-inch version of the Crazy Flapper, and I don't even know if this is going to be long enough. Like, I'm definitely going to have to trim down the skirt a little bit on this chatterbait, but it's just such a good color pairing that I can't help it. So I'm going to thread it up on here. See how she looks. I kind of over threaded it, but who cares? And yeah, I need to trim that skirt a little bit for it to be proper, because look how much of that trailer it covers. I might need to even put the larger size trailer on there. The back of the skirt is significantly longer than the front. That doesn't look great. Daniel, you're right that black crankbaits are hard to get. I don't know why. Don't know why. What are you guys talking about, Jimi Hendrix? Daniel says, I like that Cloud 9 more hearing the sound now. Yeah, no, it's a good subtle. Very methodical sound. It's a subtle clicking noise. Whereas that Curve 55 is a louder sound that you'd get out of, you know, closer to mimic a wigglewort. But yeah, the Cloud 9 is going to be a good one for sure. Matt says, I get more bites walking a rat near cover and cranking the bait down and pausing it and repeating near grass. Interesting. I will say that wake baits and rats specifically are ones that I do not vary my retrieve very much throughout the retrieve. I will mix it up if I'm not getting bit, but on a single cast, I am rarely mixing it up. But you guys know that I fish a rat mostly at night. I don't fish them during the day all that much. It's probably 90+% of the time that I'm fishing a rat is at night. Justin says the jackhammer snaps. Yeah, it does. Um, it's the best by a long shot. By a long shot. I'm not sure what you're saying, Guggen Slayer. Sorry about that. Barking spider in the house. Shoo. Just skip some comments. Justin says it thumps slightly less than the regular, but not to where you can't feel it like the stealth. Okay, well, good to know. That's kind of what I imagined, is that it would be more subtle, but I've been disappointed with the stealth blade with just how subtle it is. It's like I might as well not be throwing um, a bladed jig, let alone a high end bladed jig. I felt that the thump was as bad or worse than the original chatterbait. That I had to be fishing this thing a very specific way, or had to be pumping my rod and regaining access to the feel of the vibration out of the blade. I did not have not enjoyed the stealth blade very much since getting them. And I've only got a handful of them, maybe a few more than that, but I'm I'm not all that pleased with them. Justin said, "Hey man, thanks. You rigging that trailer before you throw it to me, or before you send it to me? Yeah, something like that. Um, yeah, I need to cut that skirt down a lot if I'm going to leave this trailer on. I don't know what, but as you can see, I rigged this a little too far. But since this is not a double wire bait keeper, I can back this off without completely ruining the bait, and just come out a little bit before, and we're fine there. But still, I'm significantly long on that skirt, and I don't know how much I like that, or if I would rather just put a longer trailer on here that's more like 3.5 inches. 2.8 is pretty short. I might just go with like a Z-Man goat, or even a Strike King Rage Menace grub, and trim it down ever so slightly. Dude, the Yoda worm is too long. I think that's like 4.5 inches. Oh, they make it in a 3.5? I did not know that. I did not know the Yoda worm came in a smaller size. Let's do a trade. If you've got any 3.5s, I'll take it. I'm not a Carl's member, so I'm not about to make a purchase from Carl's. But I'm always curious. I have the Yoda worm in the standard size, which I think is a 4.5, and I like it. I used it um, a handful of times last year. I've only got it in a green pumpkin, but I think it's a pretty good chatterbait trailer, honestly. Uh, if you got me, let's do a trade, man. Let's do a trade. I'm happy to negotiate. Do what you want, man. So hit me up on Instagram, by email, however works for you. You guys know that my email address is hooksetsarethree18@gmail.com, or you can hit me up on Instagram. I don't check either one of those more than like every couple days, maybe. I'm not as active as I once was, but you can reach me, and I'm always happy to work something out. I'm generous. Um, let's figure it out, dude. Ron says, I was just saying that in the 60s, I had a Jimi Hendrix black light poster that looked like that Morning Dawn rat. Nice. Black light poster back in the day, huh? I would imagine that that's pretty sweet. Man, black lights are throwback, huh? Interesting. Yeah, that wasn't quite something um, in my day, but I did still have admiration for them. There, when I was an early teenager, there were still situations where it was considered super cool at different parties or in certain people's bedrooms or whatever. I'm not going to go into more detail than that. Matt says, I'm really looking forward to using these Morning Dawn Timber Tigers that Eric got painted from TK. They look sweet. And near super shallow water, I can see them getting smashed. Tyler, what's your favorite old school crank that you still use? Um, Good question, man. Old school is a relative term, right? Because I am not an old school bass fisherman. I have not been fishing for all that long. So to call my baits old school, I don't know about that. But you say old school crankbait. Um, I would say like a Rapala Shad Wrap or like a like a Bandit 100. Um, would probably be the first ones that come to my mind. I'm not going to say a Wiggle Wart. Wiggle Warts, Bandits, Shad Wraps on Shad Wraps on Shad Wraps on Berkeley Flicker Shads. This is a 3,700 size box full of like Shad Wraps and Flicker Shads in the jointed, the regular, the shallow. I throw a lot of like the Shad Wrap 5. So maybe the Shad Wrap. No, I do not have any. Well, I have some Bagleys, but not any like super old school ones. Pogo Shads, I do not have. Um, I know that Epic Eric has a lot of Pogo Shads, has offloaded a bunch of them, and speaks highly of it. But no, I don't have the Pogo Shads. Well, Guggen Slayer, feel free. Um, well, what do you need? What do you need? Some Shad Wraps, dude? Shad Wraps are a great like multi-species bait. So if you're fishing around walleye, smallmouth, largemouth, and really just kind of looking to catch whatever, and you're fishing in a medium depth of water, say in that like 7 to 15 feet of water, Shad Wrap is awesome. Justin says, I just sent you an email. Have you tried the Sukoshi? I have. Yeah, I've got 1 or 2 packs of it. Um, I like it. You know, I found that you can make your own Sukoshi bug by taking, say, the Z-Man Turbo Cross. I posted about this on Instagram. I don't know how long ago. This is essentially an Elastec version of the Zoom Ultra Vibe Speed Craw with those kickers. What you do is just cut off these kickers. And what it leaves you is a body and these 3 little um legs on the side, and then these 2 little like antenna on top. There you go. You got a Sakoshi bug. But I do have a couple packs of the Sakoshi bug. I like it. It's a good bait. Guggen Slayer says shad pattern and craw. They're still good in my area. Highland Reservoir. No doubt about it. Highland Reservoir is a great place to throw a shad wrap. Brock Taylor, can you give my buddy's jig company a plug? Sure. What's your buddy's jig company called, and why do they deserve a plug? What's to know about the company? Why is their stuff any different than everybody else? I've worked with a couple jig companies over the last couple of years, specifically ones who are doing things a little bit differently with hand tying their own stuff, using living rubber skirting material, using specialized hooks, things like that, or just with innovative ideas with the head shapes or what they're doing with underspins or bladed jigs, things like that. So, Champion Jigs, shout out to Champion Jigs, even though I don't know what they do, but give us a little heads up, Brock. I will announce it right now. Let everybody know why Champion Jigs is worth looking into, and then I'll look into them after this stream. But yeah, no problem, man. Matt says got a few pogo shads. There's a new bait that has a similar design, and they're known for doing knockoffs. But Strike Pro makes a pogo style bait, and also making an old school box to try for this year. So you're making a box full of old school baits. Okay. You're going to compare them to your newer style baits, little lunchbox filled with old school baits versus a lunchbox filled with JDM and new era baits. That could make some really cool video content for your new YouTube channel, man, for sure. Brock says you can pick your hooks for Champion Jigs. They have Gamakatsu, Mustad, Owner. You can just tell them the hook and they will make it for you. Whatever head you want. Wow, so it sounds totally customizable. That's pretty cool. Interesting. I'll definitely need to check them out. Custom jigs. Nice. Sounds like Champion Jigs, if they haven't already, probably need to reach out to or get in contact with the guys from Dark Horse Tackle. It's a subscription tackle box, kind of like you'd get from Mystery Tackle Box or Monster Bass or all those other companies. But Dark Horse Tackle is like a homegrown company, much smaller than what you'd get out of those bigger names, and they specifically work with brands, small companies here in the US making their stuff here locally that is handmade and custom. And I bet they would really like the idea of at least getting to know Champion Jigs, if not working with them and ordering a significant batch for a month, maybe more than that. So yeah, just look into Dark Horse Tackle. You say ask for Woody. Sounds like Woody's the guy who's making the jigs over at Champion Jigs. Okay. Well, guys, we've been on here for 2 hours and 9 minutes, and I think it's about time for me to wrap up my evening. I have work tomorrow, as I told you guys. Super unfortunate that I've got to work on a Sunday. That is not ordinary for me, but might start becoming ordinary. And I'm not all that happy about it, but it might mean that I can switch my schedule around so that I'm working Sunday through Wednesday full time, and then maybe working overtime other hours. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. But I got to get to bed, got to wake up and hit the phones early in the morning. So Hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend. Thank you so much for hanging out tonight. Uh, Brock says he's going to buzz Dark Horse Tackle in the morning or buzz Woody. I'm not sure. But yeah, let me know if you need an introduction or want additional information about Dark Horse Tackle. But I bet that they would be interested in hearing from Champion. Um, Justin says, I'm actually going to sign up for Instagram. Woohoo! And Matt says, that stinks. Well, great stream, man. See you guys. Okay. Um, thank you for hanging out. Abe, Ron, Matt, Justin, Brock, all of you guys in here. Super appreciate your support. There's 17 people in here right now. Guggen Slayer, guys, thank you for being so active in the chat. I could barely keep up tonight, and that is fun for me. Sometimes it's more enjoyable to be able to like really go into depth and answer questions and go off topic for a while and then still feel caught up. But at the same time, I want this thing to grow. So um, thank you guys so much for hopping in here, hanging out. I know there were a fair number of new people that maybe came from Debo or just tonight was the night that happened to be convenient for them. So, John B for president, says Justin. That's hilarious. Yeah, I would vote for him. Okay, guys, peace out. Have a great night. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.